closer to home now, and New South Wales is set to hold their state election this upcoming Saturday, with Premier Gladys Berejiklian and the Liberal National Coalition government widely expected to retain a small majority over Labour and their candidate, Michael Daly. Earlier this week, I sat down with fourth-year politics student Alan, who is passionate for New South Wales politics, and I asked him, what's the current state of play?
Well, the current polls have shown it to be a dead heat, with the latest YouGov Galaxy poll going around 50-50 to the Coalition and Labour. However, the polls don't really show what the state of play is actually in certain parts of New South Wales. There's a difference between your Sydney metropolitan area as well as the rural New South Wales, where it's a bit more messier. So in Sydney, it's mainly your Liberal versus Labour matchup, you know, in the west, up north a bit, maybe down south. But when it comes to rural New South Wales, you've got a third player called the Shooters and Fishers and Farmers Party, who are making a lot of inroads towards disenfranchised or disillusioned Nationals voters who felt maybe the party hasn't really represented them as much. For example, there was a by-election a few years ago in Orange, which is quite a major town in the rural New South Wales, where the Shooters took the seat off the Nationals by a very slim margin, and they're saying that they could get up to 2 to 3 seats. So that's what the state of play is, and I don't personally know what the main issues are in the rural regions, but from what I know in the cities, it's about your usual public transport, stadiums apparently, education, healthcare, just, you know, what most election promises are based around. But yeah, it's looking to be a very interesting matchup this Saturday.
Taking a sort of broader picture, the two who are running for Premier, Gladys Berejiklian
Yep.
of the Liberal National Coalition and Michael Daly of Labour. Can you tell us a bit more about the two candidates?
I feel like just in general, Australian politics goes around more so policies, but it has become a bit more personalities based over the past few years. I mean, most of us will remember Kevin 07 when Kevin Rudd was opposition leader. Dan the Man here in Victoria with Daniel Andrews. So in New South Wales, there's been a bit of a revolving door in terms of leadership. Berejiklian is the third premier within 5 years now or so, 4.5, 5 years. It started when Barry O'Farrell won the election in 2011, and then he resigned, and then his treasurer Mike Baird became premier, and he resigned, and his treasurer Gladys Berejiklian is our premier. Labour itself has also gone through a whole host of leadership changes ever since Bob Carr back over a decade ago, retiring from state politics. I mean, he did eventually become foreign minister, but it went from Bob Carr to Morrison, Nathan Rees, Christine Keneally, John Robertson, and now we're at Michael Daly. So pretty much New South Wales have had a lot of leadership changes across both parties over the past few years. Many New South Wales voters don't really know who's representing them. It was funny because when a lot of incidents happened with Labour over the past few years, there were a few surveys that asked voters if they knew who the Labour leader was, and a lot of people were like, who's that? There might be a bit of, I'd say before this election, there was a lot of unknown, I guess, exposure around who Michael Daly is. But people who do keep updated politics will know that he was a minister when Labour was in government, and he succeeded Bob Carr in his seat of Maroubra. Berejiklian's been doing quite the show with her election campaign, always flanked by her Transport Minister Andrew Constance and Treasurer Dominic Perrottet. So I'd say they're both trying to make a mark, but not living in New South Wales, I don't know how voters are actually feeling about this or their sentiments towards these leaders. But I do believe that they probably have views, like most other Australians, that they're sick of the malarkey of politics over the past 9 years or so. You know, changing prime ministers, changing leaders, and just in Sydney especially, going through like multiple by-elections as well. So we'll see on Saturday, that's for sure.
Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, they obviously had the policy forum last night where Berejiklian outperformed Daly, securing 50 of the 100 undecided voters, while Daly was only able to secure 25. Does that sort of leadership, do those sort of leadership qualities translate to votes at the state level, or is it more of an issues campaign?
I feel like it's also a cyclical campaign because after 2-3 terms, voters generally want change. But at the same time, if the alternative isn't strong by that term, then it might just continue on until there's more consolidation on the opposition. But the thing is, based on elections, not just Australia, but in other countries as well, such as America, usually by the time people watch debates, they've kind of already... people that's not at the forum anyway, have already decided on who they're going to vote for. It'll take a lot more to convince them not to vote for someone. You know, it's just, for example, if there was a big scandal that happened on the day of elections or the day before, so if something happened today, then it could shift the votes. But generally, in Australia, debates haven't been as well publicised as they used to be. So the majority of voters probably will see a headline and that's about it. But they've probably already made their mind about who to vote. Because remember, there's also early voting, so a lot of people have already voted. In Victoria, back in November, around, I think it was over half of voters voted early, me included. So yeah, it might be a similar case in New South Wales as well. So we'll have to see on Saturday when it comes to key seats that comes out and see if there's a substantial swing against the government.
Now, taking a broader view, obviously there's set to be a federal election, I believe, later this year. What would be the implications for either the coalition retaining the state or perhaps even a shock Labour victory on broader national politics?
If there's a shock Labour win, then it's not looking good for the Morrison government in New South Wales, especially in very marginal seats, such as federally, like Reid, Banks, even Bennelong. A lot of those seats fall in the New South Wales Parliament anyway, fall seats under such as for Reid, it's like, I'm trying to think, like Strathfield's pretty marginal Labour. If you go down to the coast, Coogee, which is apparently under Wentworth, which we know went to an independent Dr. Karen Phelps after Malcolm Turnbull retired from Parliament. So generally, the mood of how voters go in a state election can give a more clearer representation of how it goes. But then there's a counter argument that if voters are angry and then they, take it out on, a sitting government or something, then maybe the results will be a bit placated when the actual federal election comes.
So, returning back to the state level of New South Wales, as we already mentioned, the poll is neck and neck, but there is a high possibility that the coalition gain a small majority or even a minority and have to rely on the Shooters and Fishers party. Is this precedented in Australian politics?
Well, we're not sure if they'll do a coalition with the Shooters if that happens.
Confidence and supply.
Yeah, we'll see, because the crossbench at the moment has 7 non-major party members. You've got 3 Greens, 3 Independents, and 1 Shooter. Based on Saturday, we could see that to 2 Greens, 2 Shooters, and I think 3 Independents. So they have a lot of options. They could always get supply and confidence from the Independents or the Shooters or the Greens. So we don't know that yet. But in terms of if that's been unprecedented or not, no. Federally in 2010, when Julia Gillard was Prime Minister, she had a deal with 2 independents, Rob Oakeshott and Tony Windsor. In trying to think, in the Australian Capital Territory, the current governing party is the Labor Party with the Greens. And in Queensland in 2015, it was around 43 to 44 seats to Labor, and they had an independent give confidence and supply. So hung parliaments are quite common in Australia. Usually it's a large majority or hung parliament. And based on the current polling, the coalition is set to take around 46 to 49 seats from down from 52, and Labor is set to have 35 to 40.
And that's out of
93. You need 47 seats for a majority. So it's going to be a very interesting night, that's for sure. Yeah.
Would you care to make a prediction?
It really depends on the seats. If Labor can take some of its seats it lost in 2011, such as Riverstone, Mulgoa, Kiama, then it has a chance of governing. But if we only see swings in certain seats that night, then it could probably most likely be a reduced majority or hung parliament. Now, my predictions, I'm not betting any money or anything. It's that volatile that experts don't even know what's going to happen as well.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you very much.